Hi, and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week, we are talking all about the secret to self-acceptance. Now, many of our clients are outwardly happy, successful, and getting on with their lives. But deep down, they have this gnawing sense of self-doubt, that they're not good enough, or they're not deserving of happiness, success, or love. So what's going on here? And is it ever possible to achieve inner peace or deep contentment with who we really are? And what are the steps we need to take to reach this place of self-acceptance? Well, in this week's teaching, we answer these questions. Okay, David, so is it actually possible to reach this state of full self-acceptance?
Well, the direct answer is yes, of course it is, because that's who you are. And what I'm going to hopefully guide you through on this video is the steps you take to reach that place of Wu Wei, to reach that place of flow, to reach that place of happiness.
So, but if I'm not happy with who I am, if I have real niggling self-doubts about myself, that I believe I'm not good enough, what do I need to do to accept myself?
Well, this is why it's such a good subject, Alex, because it allows us, again, it's going to be one of these videos where we can go 101 and we can dig down into some of the techniques. So the first technique that you're discussing there is what I get the majority of the time with my clients, and I call it the flip. So let me explain to you what's happening. So they'll open up with a question, why can't I love myself? You see in what they're doing, they're making themselves the victim. Why can't I love myself? Why can't I stop doing this? How do I stop doing this? Or how do I love myself? How do I appreciate myself? And what you're doing there is you're taking away your self-responsibility and you're trying to place it onto someone else. You're trying to say, can you tell me what I should be doing? And therefore, we know at the roots of this, the inner child is involved.
Well, I guess I may have done a lot of self-development work, practicing gratitude, trying to think positively about myself and my life. I may believe that I've worked really, really hard, read all the right books, practicing the meditations, trying to look on the bright side of things, but it's still not working, David. So I'm kind of asking you, there must be a solution. There must be an ABC that I'm missing something. What am I missing here?
So if that conversation went to that when you were just role playing, what you've led me into right away is another one of the Wu Wei wisdom core techniques, the golden thread. So if you listen to what Alex said when she was role playing, I've tried all of these, I've read all the books, I've watched all the videos, and none of this is working. So then the next question you ask is the why question. So why do you think it's not working, Alex?
Well, it's not working because I still have the same red light emotional feelings of uncomfortableness, of yuckiness, of feeling deflated, feeling slightly hopeless with who I am or my achievements, of just generally feeling down on myself.
So I know this is difficult for Alex because you're going to have to try and do a role play.
Yeah.
But you see what she's just done there? She's taken us back to the feelings. So this is what creates the carousel. So when I asked her, why hasn't it worked? She's then told me her feelings. It hasn't worked, David, because of my feelings. But Alex, you create your feelings, don't you?
Well, I accept I create my feelings, but I guess I'm saying my red light emotional feelings of uncomfortableness, of pain, are telling me that it definitely hasn't worked. So all the techniques I've been trying to accept myself, to feel great about myself, haven't worked. So I know I guess they're like the sticking plaster that I was trying, but they weren't getting to the root of the problem.
So what is it? What's your belief? Why they haven't worked?
Well, I guess deep down, I believe or I think that there's a part of me that is, I'm not a good person. I don't deserve to be happy, that I need to work harder to be a better person, or there's something wrong with me. Something's not right with me. That's what I believe.
And so you see, Alex is trying her best to role play. But once you can get away from the feelings, and then you can start to interrogate yourself, because you can do this for yourself. Ask yourself why. On this role play, Alex is saying, it's because I don't believe I'm a good person. Then you do the golden thread again. Why don't you believe you're a good person?
Well, I don't believe I'm a good person because I am not achieving as much as my peers, my friends, when I look at them. But also, I know that, say, compared to my brother or my sibling, that I'm not achieving as much as them. And I look at them and how they're like a good all-rounder, and I'm just not the same all-rounder. I feel like a failure.
And so you see what she's just done there? She's gone to CCJ, criticizing, comparing, and being judgmental. So now, playing this role model, Alex is now comparing herself to her role, to her friends, to her family, to her somebody else. So do you believe you should be as good as everybody else around you?
Well,
So again, I'm just doing the golden thread. So the golden thread is like reverse engineering. I know it's very difficult for Alex because she's just making this up. But we get asked this question a lot. What is the golden thread, David, and how do I do it? And it's just starting with the emotion, with the red light emotion, acknowledge the emotion, and then ask yourself, why have I created that emotion? And then it's like following a thread down. You can do this for yourself without a doubt. Don't let yourself go back to the emotion. And then, as Alex is just trying to demonstrate for us, now she's come down to, I'm choosing to compare myself with others. That's what she said. And then you can ask, why? Why do you compare yourself to others?
I compare myself to others because it's a good way, a measuring stick for me to know whether I'm good enough or not. And when I do compare myself with others, I know, I believe I'm falling short. Therefore, I know I'm not good enough. I'm not where I should be, and I could be better. And the fact that I know I could be better means that I'm never satisfied, and I can't accept who I am right now.
So now she just demonstrated the carousel of despair. Now you see how she's given herself this circular reasoning. So when you're doing the golden thread, try and concentrate on the first thing that you think about or you say to yourself. Do you think your goodness has to be measured?
Yeah, because if I can't compare or measure myself against other people, how do I know that I'm good enough?
So you believe that someone is only good enough compared to someone else. So here comes one of the tests now. We've demonstrated this in many videos. So if you had a physical child and your physical child came to you, 6 or 7 years old, and the child said to you, Mummy, Daddy, am I good enough? By the logic that Alex is saying, you would have to say to your child, please go and compare yourself with your brother, your sister, your classmates. You see how doing the golden thread, the reverse engineering, gets down to the faulty logic.
But the thing is, though, David, we wouldn't, as a parent, say that directly to our child. But
you would.
Yeah, but often parents do kind of, if a child comes and says, well, I failed my maths exam, or I've got really low marks at school, then the parent still compares them saying, well, you should have better grades at school, or there's still a measuring stick going on, whether it's the child or the parent.
And so you're highlighting what we call a life lesson. That's something you have to be aware of. How long did it take us? Even though it's difficult for you, it took us 2 minutes or 3 minutes to get down to a life lesson. The life lesson now is, should you compare? So you see, we started with a golden thread and we go down. I can't accept myself. I can't, I'm not good enough. I need my goodness. I'm comparing myself with others. Now we come down to a life lesson. Should you compare? Because your parents compared you, let's say that's right, just for this demonstration. Let's say your parents did compare you. Were they right, and should you do it?
Well, I guess many of us never question that if our parents compared us with, say, our friends' grades at school, or compared us with our siblings, or favoured our siblings against us, or criticised us compared to our friends or siblings. We accepted that as the truth, as that's the way it should be. We were a young child at the time. We would never think to question our parents' logic or our parents' judgments on ourselves or other people.
And that really is a strength of the model that we're demonstrating here. Please question. Please question yourself. When you say, I can't accept myself, flip the question over into a why question. Why don't I accept myself? And then, as we've tried to demonstrate, do the golden thread. Why? Be careful. Don't go back to your feelings. Remember, you are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. You are not a victim in this at all. Then you go down to a belief. I believe my goodness can only be, I'm paraphrasing, I believe my goodness can only be accounted for if I compare myself. And then do one of the techniques we've showed you in many videos. It's a really easy technique. Would I say that to my physical child? If my physical child came up to me and said, Mummy, Daddy, am I good enough? You would have to say by your logic, well, son, you go and compare yourself with other children and then you'll know. And you would not do that. Now, that may have happened to you. I'm accepting and agreeing with that. But that doesn't make it the truth. And this is why I think this teaching is all about Shen or spirituality. You have to go to your truth. In the role play that Alex has just done, this person that Alex is role playing for us is questioning her own goodness. And this is why you see how quickly you get to the spirituality.
But as a child, I can see that we maybe compared silly things or blew things out of proportion or misunderstood how to judge and reference ourselves. But now as an adult, if we compare ourselves with our peers, we can, with an intelligent mind, say, well, look, they're much more sociable than me. Look, they're earning much more money than me. Look, they are in a much better loving relationship with me. I'm not, as an adult, they are, I guess, my perception would be these are factual things I'm observing, that this is a reality. I'm not as good as them. So this is not like a childhood misunderstanding. This is an adult. It's still comparing, but there's a part of my mind that says, well, you to pretend that they are, your relationship is as strong as their relationship, to pretend that you're as successful in your career as they are, it's a pretense, it's a lie. It's like there's part of my mind won't accept that, okay, it's just okay to be who I am, where I am, and not be as good as them.
But that's what he won't accept. It's okay for you to be who you are and be proud and be set with who you are. What your mind is trying to do, based on the inner child work, is to say, I can only be good if I'm better or as good as them. And as we've always said, you don't know what goes on behind the mask. You don't know what they are going through. You do not know their health state. You do not know their finances. You do not know their relationships. In fact, you know zero about this person that you're comparing yourself. What it does do immediately, it stops your authentic and natural flow into what you are as a human being and to reach your potential. And what you do instead, you move and you almost, the Taoists call it, you're walking in their footsteps.
Yeah.
You're always behind them because instead of following your path, because your path may not be their path. Your path may not be their path. Your path is unique to you. And what I'm trying to encourage you to do is do not compare yourself. There is no value. There is no spiritual connection in comparing yourself with others because we're all unique. We're all in this wonderful universe walking our path. Every time you look over, you're taking your eyes off your own path. And so this is why this comes in from childhood. This is an inner child life lesson and a spiritual teaching that you need to accept. And if you don't accept it, then you do the golden thread. So what you should be saying, playing this role, is I'm not going to accept that, David. I should follow those. I should be in their shadow.
Well, it's like when you explain that, okay, if you're following someone else or you're comparing yourself with someone else now as an adult or as when you were a child, you're not being the authentic you.
Absolutely.
You're blocking your authentic energy.
Absolutely.
You're not allowing yourself to flourish and grow and explore life and experience life authentically because you're always walking in that other person's shadow.
Yes.
So when you say that, that kind of lifts, that gives me a sense of relief. I guess it connects to my share and my spiritual energy, my authentic truth. However, there's that stubborn, locked in part of my mind, that inner child, that ego mind, my emotional mind that says, yes, that's all very good, David, and we can have this conversation now and I can feel a little bit better and a bit lighter because you've taken this kind of burden off me of thinking. But as soon as I go back to my normal life, this conversation's ended, this video's ended, my inner child creeps back in and starts with the negative self-talk, starts with the comparing, starts with the being judgmental.
So the way I work with my clients, and this is what I say to them, when you're doing the work, when you're doing the Wu Wei Wisdom process, if you do what Alex just said, and this is totally normal, she used however, I normally use the word but. I agree with you. Everything you're saying, David, is absolutely right. I shouldn't walk in other people's footsteps, but, or however, means you haven't accepted it. So this is what I try and say to my clients. If you're not going to accept that 100%, then please tell me why you should walk in other people's footsteps. Now, this is very important. See, we go back to the 101 stop. You see what I've just done? I put the accountability back onto the person. You're absolutely entitled not to believe me.
Okay.
You're absolutely entitled to tell me that you're not an individual. I'm praying for you to tell me why you should walk into their footsteps. But own it.
Yeah.
Own it. Take accountability. This is where the inner child is so clever because it'll duck and dive and it will just do what Alex has demonstrated. Everything you said, oh, David, that was so good. Oh, it's so inspiring. However, it means you haven't accepted it. You haven't accepted it. Why don't you come down to truth, honesty, and integrity and just say, I'm not going to accept it.
Okay, so my inner child is saying in response to that just saying, well, I'm not going to compare myself. I don't care what other people are doing or how successful they are. I'm just going to tread my own path. My inner child is saying, well, you know what? That's a cop-out. That's just a cop-out. You're just giving yourself an easy ride. My inner child is saying, I want to be an individual. I want to tread my own path, but I also need to be and want to be as good as, or if not better than them. It's like my inner child wants its cake and wants to eat it, wants everything, wants the best of everything. And if it doesn't get that, then I am totally down on myself. I'm totally dissatisfied.
It Are you okay with this
Yeah,
role play?
yeah.
So what the inner child has just told me is contradictory. You said you want to be an individual.
Yeah.
Well, how can you be an individual by following somebody else?
Yeah, well, my inner child saying, well, I just want to be individually better than them, and then I'll be good enough.
And so now you've
But
gone
where
back to
does that
compare.
come from? Where does that logic, inner child logic, come from?
That's a great question. This goes back, and we've done many videos of the pendulum, the emotional pendulum. So if this is you, thank you, Alex. It's really hard what you're doing. But if this is you or something like you, and it's difficult because you're just making this up, this goes back to the inner child. Good, bad, right, wrong, better, worse, up, down. It's the logic of the inner child. And he just sees things in these two extremes of the emotional pendulum. There's no wu way. That's why it's very difficult to do this teaching, to pass this teaching on to you, and to do what Alex says, because many people write in and say wonderful things and say, David, thank you, it's really helpful. My question is, are you putting it into practice? And if you're not putting it into practice, that's fine. That's great. I'm happy with that. You don't have to. Just ask yourself why. That's the golden thread. So this inner child here that we're good enough to have says she wants to be better than everyone else. So I would go, let me show you what I do so you can do it. When I'm talking to the inner child, I'll always call it a pet name like little one or sweetheart or whatever. And I say, okay, little one, why do you want to be better than everybody else?
Because then everyone will like me and that they'll love me.
Okay. So you see now, if this is you, try and tie this up for you. Okay, sweetheart, why is it important that everybody likes you and loves you?
Because
Do you notice how the energy changes now? See, you get through that first kind of a little bit aggressive, a little bit thing. And once you keep on calm and ask the why question, then you get to the real root of the problem.
And like for me now, it's like I'm getting this feeling in my throat, it's like I'm starting to talk about things that I've kind of buried down. My inner child is like buried down. I'm used to talking about the comparing, that I'm not good enough compared to them, they're better than me, because I'm used to talking about that, and that's kind of easy. But when we get down to the inner child, it's like I can feel like the inner child's emotions coming up now. So
the inner child's now creating emotions. Remember, she's creating emotions for one reason. So I stop. And this is why for those of you considering working with me, it can be very difficult. Because unless you tell me to stop, my job now is to guide the inner child. Because all of their lives, they've been using their emotions to get someone else stop so they don't address the problem. So the problem here, I'm really appreciative of you, because everybody asks us this question, don't they? See, the inner child believes that other people don't like her or love her. So you have to try and find out why. Why don't you think people like you and love you?
well, because they ignored me, or they laughed at me, or they scolded me. I guess now my inner child is back to when I was younger, but also kind of thinking of my peers as well. Like I felt left out or ignored or laughed at, or just, I guess my inner child's pulling on examples of things in her memory, and she didn't like that feeling at all.
So the first thing that I would say if I was working with this client, although the adult has accepted that they create the emotion, I'm 100% sure that the inner child does not believe that they create their emotions. I see that this inner child we're playing around with here and is seeing that emotions are created externally and they have to protect themselves, emotional protection from the emotion. So we would have to do that work. But once you can get down to this different energetic level and you can speak to the child with love, with consistency, with honesty, and you can, and when this is how I do it, it's almost like the client is channeling, if you want, the inner child. So there's no CCJ, there's no criticism, there's no comparing, there's no judgmental. When I'm doing that work, it's like I've got a 6-7-year-old child here, and we're just trying to find out what she's stuck with. So you see what we've just done there. We've started from acceptance. I think that took us about 10 minutes. You can look at the timer, 15 minutes. And we've gone down, and it's not about acceptance at all. When you do the golden thread, it comes down to her experiences as a child and how she interpreted those experiences. And now what she's looking for here, I don't know what you think. Alex has been good enough. It seems to me that this inner child does not value herself. She's looking external for validation. When she said, people won't like me, people won't love me, what she's saying is, I want external validation from others to prove that I'm enough. And we would have to work with her, that inner child part of Alex's mind, to convince her that she's already enough. And we have to be in a position that when we're doing this, the inner child is quite happy to disagree, that we don't lose our temper, we don't raise our voices, we don't get annoyed. We just try and understand why she doesn't agree. And that really is the basis of non-acceptance. So they're not accepting themselves. So here's the life lesson. You've been asked me to tell you a life lesson. Here's the life lesson about non-acceptance. You're not accepting yourself because you're looking externally for other people to accept you and give you value. So instead of focusing on your life journey, you spend your life trying to manipulate, let me use that word again, to manipulate other people to give you value, to give you worth, to give you these. And therefore, when you see somebody who may be doing better than you, it's like somebody just punched you in the face, because that's not fair. And you see, that's very childlike. So the life lesson is that you already have value. Value is not something that's given to you.
And if we were, as a child, though, if we were actually told by our parents or a carer or someone important to us that we weren't good enough, or we were scolded, or we were made to believe we weren't lovable, or that we were useless, or we misinterpreted like someone's silent treatment or someone being angry in the household and that it was our fault, that child now has got this embedded vow that it's the problem is with them, that there's something wrong with them. So are you saying from that point onwards of those childhood experience, we carry this need, this desperate need to be reassured because we doubt ourselves? We carry this seed of self-doubt from childhood, whether it was because of something that actually was said to us or something we misinterpreted.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And that becomes a filter. And so every situation, every experience, every relationship, every person is viewed through that filter. And what we have to do by the golden thread and by talking to the child, and I call it emotional re-education, we have to go back and re-educate the child to change the vow. We can't change the vow. I can't, if you were my client, I can't change your vow. I can help you understand your vow. I can bring it to the surface so we can look at it. So then you can make the choice. Is this the truth? See, so then we come back to spirituality. Is this the truth? Is this honesty? Does this reflect my integrity? Is it that there is something wrong with me? Is it that I only get value from other people? How can they give you value? So you see, that would be how a session would go. Well, could you explain to me how other people give you value? And what you're doing, you're kind of dissolving this core belief that's been in place for childhood. And the way to do it is not to kind of cover it over. It's the opposite, the flip. The way to do it is expose it, to bring it to the light, to create an environment that you can discuss. The child can give you their reasoning, like Alex tried to do. Well, I want to be better than them. I want to be the best. I want them to appreciate me. And then you go, so why do you want them to appreciate you? And when you're doing the golden thread, as I say to my clients, the frame of mind is genuinely interested. Like, I find it fascinating. Why do you want that? Because I'm willing to learn. They could be right. So why do you want to walk in other people's footsteps and be an individual? It doesn't make sense to me. Explain that to me, please. And then the child, and then you'll see, as Alex demonstrated, first of all, you get like that cockiness of the child, that willfulness. Oh, I don't come out. And then if you take your time, work your way through, then you get that flip. And then you see the little child. And I've been doing this job for nearly 40 years, and I've never found a monster. When you break through, I've always found this scared little child, totally confused, bemused, not understanding reality, not understanding and not having any tools to deal with life. And that's our job. As an adult, it's your job. This is why I like the analogy of the inner child and the parent. It's almost like she or he is your spiritual child stuck in a dark room, and now you are her spiritual parent. And by taking your time, I know it's difficult, but it can be done, talking to the child, sitting with the child, answering the child's questions, because this is what we call the life lesson. The child doesn't know the answer. They've concluded an answer, but it'll always be the extreme.
Yeah, and so this reparenting process, because I guess for many of us up until now, we've just been accepting the inner child narrative. We've just been going along with the inner child's strategies for getting reassurance, for earning love, earning worth without question. And so what you're saying is, rather than bowling and saying, no, we're doing it this way, no, you shouldn't be thinking like that, you're saying open up a conversation with yourself, whether it's in quiet meditation or when you go for a walk, or when you're sitting in the park, or when you've got half an hour free in the morning in bed. Just have that inner conversation, that dialogue with yourself to start pinpointing the thought processes like you did with May, and questioning at each stage, why would you think that?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Where does that come from?
Yeah.
Where's the evidence for that?
Yes, exactly. Like genuinely interested. And this technique, what the child will always want to do is to push you back to her feelings or his feelings. Don't allow that. Say, you create your feelings, and then you go down and you find the root. And that's where you can make significant, profound life changes very quickly if you want to. If you want to go down and address these issues, and they can be very serious issues of dysfunctionality, of abuse in your childhood, but they have to be resolved in your mind, and you can do it. I do not doubt this. And so this opening question about acceptance, this is what brought us onto this subject. But you see, the statement itself doesn't even make sense to me. I don't accept myself. I don't even understand what that means. If you write that down as a statement and try and make sense of that, you can't. What part of you is not accepting what part of you? It doesn't even make sense. But until you do that genuinely honest questioning, that spiritual journey, then you'll see, you'll get brash, you'll get this push away, oh, I can't be bothered, oh, I'm too tired, oh, you're all... But you've got to keep on gently going down, and then open up the conversation And then that part of your mind, probably for the first time, someone's going to sit with them and listen and give them some answers. And that's how you break out and you come back into your Wu Wei to live in your flow, to reach your potential.
And I think, what my inner child's just given me now, when you say, well, what is it you're not accepting? Or how can you say you can't accept yourself? What does that mean? I guess what it means for me is like my inner child has this image of who I should be.
Mm-hmm.
And my inner child believes that I am not that person. And what I'm not accepting is that I am not that person, that image, that kind of Disneyland princess who is the high achiever, who is everything to everyone, who hasn't done anything wrong, can't do anything wrong, doesn't put a foot out a step wrong. And because, again, it's this comparing, because I'm then comparing where I am, who I am really, with that unachievable perfection. That's what I'm not accepting.
Okay. So I'm just giving you a second to think about what question would you ask now. Why do you want to be perfect? Would be the question for me. So, sweetheart, why do you want to be perfect?
Well, then we go back to where we started, or where we ended just before, which is so that everyone will love me.
Okay. And why do you want everyone to love you? So we're back to the why question again, you see? So calm, interested. So why is it important for you that everybody loves you?
Because then I'll know I'm good enough.
And why do you believe you're not good enough already?
Because when they ignored me, or they told me off, or they said I wasn't good enough, these are things like childhood stuff, then that meant to me as the child that I wasn't good enough.
So you believe, so I'm going to cut through.
So it's like we've gone through a circle
Exactly.
again.
There'll be lots of circles like this. So you believe what they said to be true.
I did at the time, yeah.
Do you believe that now?
Well, I haven't really thought about it, and this is the thing, because
That's
now
right.
if I think about it, and if I think about who the person or the people were, whether it's my teacher, a relative, a sibling, a kind of one of my peers who I really wanted to be friends with at school, and they pushed me away. Actually, that was a big thing there, and that was a massive thing. That was like earth-shattering to me as a child. But when I think about those individuals now, I'm still emotionally connected to the story of who I was as a child in relation to them. But actually, they as individuals have kind of lost their power in my life in reality, but emotionally, they still have a lot of power over me.
So again, I know it's difficult for Alex, but the inner child she's trying to role play, I would believe that this inner child still doesn't believe that she creates her emotions. I think this inner child still believes emotions have come to someone else. You see how she said, I'm still emotionally connected. So you have to listen very intently to what the child is saying.
Well, my beliefs are connected. My inner child is connected to the story of who I was in relation to them when I was younger.
And so do you believe that they have more power than you?
When I was a child, definitely. Now, absolutely not.
And why do you believe as a child someone has more power than you?
Well, because it could have been a teacher, it could have been a parent, grandparent. So an adult has more power over a child. Or at school, it might have been like one of the cool kids, and I was like not so cool, and they made fun of me or bullied me. They have more power over me, or that's what I perceived at the time.
That's great. So that's exactly what happens. So that's very reasonable, isn't it, for a child to think that? I think that's very reasonable. So I would give that child the gratification. Say, I agree with you. Your parents at the time did have the power over you. Is that true now?
Well, practically, Well, no, they don't. Except for the beliefs that this story that's still connected, hooked into.
And why do you want to hold this story?
Well, I don't want to hold the story.
Well, who's holding the story?
Well, must be my inner child is holding it.
Well, that's what I thought I was speaking to. Why does she want to hold the story?
She wants to, because it's almost like unfinished business.
Okay, how do we finish the business, sweetheart? We're fast tracking it, because you can see it would take.
We finished the business by me, the adult me, being the responsible adult now, rather than the minor child constantly looking back to the teacher at school, the parent, the cool kid at school who bullied me. Like they're a point of reference. My inner child should be looking to the authentic adult me as the point of reference.
I'm going to have to fast track a little bit, because you can see it would take a little bit of time. So let me ask you a question I would ask the spiritual parent. Can I ask you, Alex, do you accept your inner child?
I do. She can annoy me sometimes.
There's no. See? And so you see,
well, because
we haven't done the work.
Because I understand that my inner child is at the root of a lot of my emotional upsets and turmoil. But I accept that she has a lot of misunderstandings, and she's trying her best, and she's a good girl, and so yeah, I do love her, but I just don't give her enough attention or time.
Thank you. And so that was a bit unfair on Alex, but you can see how I was just trying to demonstrate how you work it round, because when you're not accepting, remember this was the title of this video, the life lesson is really you're not accepting yourself, and that's the truth. And so what you have to do is to clear all the confusion, like we've been trying to demonstrate. It will be personal to you. Thank you. You've done a great job, Alex. And it's very difficult. It will be personal to you, but you have to clear all this emotional and mental confusion. You have to go down by the golden thread to the inner child. You have to understand what the life lessons the inner child is stuck on. Then you have to be the spiritual parent or the guardian to guide the inner child. The number one thing is, how do you value your inner child? Can she look for you to get value, approval, and all of the things she's looking externally for? She should be looking to you to get it.
Because I can see that if we don't accept and love our inner child, how can we then teach our inner child, having those discussions you've talked about here, how can we have those discussions with the inner child with truth, honesty and authenticity if we are just want to kind of get rid of the inner child, if we just want to push her away, if we're just annoyed with her or him? We have to see ourselves as the child we were and understand why our inner child is as they are, why our inner child is doubting, why our inner child is fearful, why our inner child is petulant, why our inner child drives us crazy. We have to understand the motivations of the inner child, because it's just a young child still. That's part of our mind.
And that's what the golden thread does. That's what the golden thread does. It's like reverse engineering. You start at the top and you reverse engineer until you find this little dark room with a child scared and frightened as in the corner. You always know, Alex used the word however. You always know when you have to use the word but, or there's a resistance. When you say, well, do you believe that? And you can't go, yes, I believe it. If you go, I'd like to believe it, it means you don't believe it. Then you know that the inner child is in control there, and that's what you've got to do some more work to try and find out what you actually believe, because the inner child then is in the driving seat. It's like you're not driving your car. You've got an 8-year-old at the steering wheel driving your car. And that's why it needs love, needs compassion, what we call compassionate self-discipline. It needs to bring you in your inner child, rather than being in a kind of an adverse fighting situation. You've got to bring you and your inner child together as a team and work on this together. Because until you accept yourself, until you love yourself, until you value yourself, your life will be wasted looking externally for those qualities that only you can give yourself.
Thank you, David. And as you can see, this whole subject really of self-acceptance as an adult is rooted back in those inner child issues. And we've tried to expose some of the, I guess, the logic and the patterns and the manipulations and what the inner child's striving for here.
Yeah, we get asked many times, how do you do the golden thread? And it is a very simple process. Unfortunately, for everyone, it's slightly different because everyone is unique and all their subjects. So thank you again, Alex. It's very difficult. But try and do it for yourself. Remember, ask why. Don't let it take you to the feelings. Yeah. Just ask why and keep on going down until you find that inner child. And as Alex will tell you, you'll know because your emotions will change as you go to that deeper level.
Great. Thank you, David. So we've done lots more teachings on inner child reparenting, on self-love, on CCJ, that comparing, criticizing and being judgmental about ourselves. So I will put links to those resources in the show notes so you can dig a little bit deeper on some of the practical things we've talked about in this video. But I really hope that it's given you a demonstration of the steps involved in the inner child work and the narrative, and to drill down deep to get to that foundational reason as to why we lack self-acceptance.
What we call the vow.
The vow. Yeah, brilliant. So if you have enjoyed this teaching, please do let us know. Share it with someone else who you think may also benefit. If you are interested in working one-to-one with David on any of the issues we've talked about here, David works by video call with clients all over the world every week, and I will put a link to learn more about David's sessions in the show notes as well. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings every week, and we'd love to share your journey with you. Bye-bye.